Jetzt spricht Miriam Volkmann. Miriam Volkmann vertritt eigentlich Elsa Rachtbach, ist aber ebenso wie sie tätig bei der Friedensaktivistinnengruppe Code Pink. Und mit Code Pink verbindet dieser Ort noch insofern etwas, als dass sie hier jeden Montag um 20 Uhr eine kleine Kundgebung, jeden Montag um 18 Uhr eine kleine Kundgebung für den Weltfrieden veranstalten. Miriam Volkmann.
On Monday, when his trial finally begins, Bradley Manning will have been in detention for more than 1,000 days, including 11 months in solitary confinement. Manning's disclosures have brought desperately needed light to the people of the U.S. and around the world in their struggles for peace and justice. But the Obama administration has been unrelenting in its persecution of Bradley Manning. And starting on Monday, the administration's campaign against him will conclude with a probable judgment that will send him to prison for decades, if not for the rest of his life. To those who saw in the presidential candidacy of Barack Obama a hope for a turn towards peace and justice in U.S. politics, it is heartbreaking to realize that Obama and his regime have persecuted Bradley Manning for far more than, for example, the Nixon administration persecuted the whistleblower Daniel Ellsberg, who helped bring the Vietnam War to an end by leaking the Pentagon Papers in 1971. And where is John Kerry, Obama's new Secretary of State? When Kerry returned from military service in Vietnam, he became a member of Vietnam Veterans Against the War and helped to organize an historic hearing in 1971 called Winter Soldier, in which Vietnam War veterans testified firsthand about war crimes in which they had participated or that they had witnessed in Vietnam. That year, Kerry also testified as a war veteran before Congress and said that what most threatens the United States is the crimes that the U.S. government is committing. And he said, we have to speak out. Why does Kerry not speak out in support of Bradley Manning? Bradley Manning was willing to go to prison so that we could know the truth. As a heroic whistleblower, he stands on the shoulders of thousands and thousands of ordinary heroes of the GI movement, going back to the Vietnam War era and continuing to the present day, many of whom have also been willing to go to prison so that the truth about these wars can be known and so that these wars can be stopped. When Bradley Manning enlisted in the U.S. military in 2007, many GIs were already trying to tell the truth about U.S. war crimes in Iraq and Afghanistan. Some refused to redeployment to Iraq or Afghanistan, knowing they would be brought to trial when they would have at least some chance to tell what they had seen and experienced. One of the early GI whistleblowers was a soldier stationed in Darmstadt named Blake Lemoyne. I met Blake in 2005 when he was back in Darmstadt after his tour of duty in Iraq. He asked me to help him get access to the media to tell about the crimes he had seen. Like Bradley, Blake had entered the military with optimism and the idea that he would be doing some good. But on his first tour in Iraq, he was shocked at the cynical brutality and racism of the U.S. military towards the Iraqi people. Blake went on a one-man strike. He refused all duties, closed his bank account so the army could not pay him, went on a hunger strike so that the army could not feed him, and even proposed to live in his car so that the army could not house him. And what he said he most wanted was to tell about what he had seen to the media. Like Bradley, Blake was convinced that Americans would never support these war policies if they knew the truth. In 2008, anti-war veterans organized a new winter soldier hearing. 50 veterans told in excruciating detail about the crimes they had participated in or had witnessed in Iraq and Afghanistan. They told about the essential racism of these wars. Some showed videos they had shot of atrocities they had witnessed. They hoped that their compelling first-hand testimony would provoke a wide discussion of U.S. policies, but the mainstream media ignored the winter soldier hearing. A year and a half later, motivated by the same compelling desire to make the truth known, Bradley Manning approached the Washington Post and the New York Times, and he had far more evidence to show. 500,000 reports from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, more than 250,000 diplomatic cables from U.S. embassies around the world, and 779 documents pertaining to Guantanamo Bay, as well as a July 2007 video of a U.S. Apache helicopter attack on Iraqi civilians. But the Post and the Times ignored him. It was only because of the heroic and innovative work of WikiLeaks that this evidence has become publicly known. The Obama administration has tried to demonize and belittle Bradley Manning, to keep him isolated and wrapped in silence. His first chance to tell of his motivations was during the pre-trial hearing this past February. And journalists had to actually smuggle his testimony out of that hearing. In his pre-trial testimony, Bradley told how his mind had largely been made up by watching the secret video that would later be released under the title Collateral Murder. He said, "The most alarming aspect of the video to me, however, was the seemingly delightful bloodlust the aerial weapons team seemed to have. They dehumanized the individuals they were engaging and seemed to not value human life and referred to them as, quote unquote, dead bastards, and congratulated each other on their ability to kill in large numbers. Seeing the videos, even some of the soldiers who had perpetrated the crime saw the truth of what they had done and apologized and expressed regret. The Obama regime, with its aggressive wars and targeted killings, perpetuates dehumanization and, at the same time, tries to silence the essential humanity of Bradley Manning. The trial, beginning on Monday, will be under a thick cloak of secrecy, monitored by military censors with no public access to court documents, and covered by a sparse and largely independent media. And Bradley's idealistic intent will not be taken into consideration in determining his guilt. Moreover, the important question of whether the documents he leaked should ever have been classified at all, or whether we, the people, instead have a right to know, will also not be discussed at trial. When Obama visits Berlin 3 weeks from now, we will surely find ways to let him know that the whole world is watching the Bradley Manning trial. We will insist that the trial transcripts be made public, and we will insist that Obama pardon Bradley Manning and set him free.